Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. It's another truck talk with Travis. Been busy today. I couldn't tell you if the world has ended yet or not because I've been too busy to even check. Just doing a lot of outside work and trying to get some things caught up because I've gotten behind on some things. So, if half the world's burning right now, I couldn't tell you. So don't be tuning in here today to see if that's what's going on. If I could ask everyone that watches this channel, do you think that we are nearing the end of the run or seeing this country or the Western civilization collapse? Or are we in the end times? Or whatever term you want to put it, I would guess that most of you would say yes. The thing is that, well, people have been saying that for a long time. Back in the late 90s, people thought that it was all going to end because of Y2K. People thought it was going to end in 2012 because of the Mayan calendar. They thought it was going to end when Obama took office, when Trump took office, when Trump didn't get elected, when the pandemic started. Going further back, the 70s and 80s, everyone thought we were going to be annihilated by nuclear weapons. It was just around the corner. I can remember as a child hiding under desks at schools. You all remember that. It's been going for a long time. And that's why there are some people that say, yeah, but this end of the world stuff, been talking about it for a long time. It's not happened yet. I mean, even Jesus's disciples thought that he was coming back in their lifetime. So are folks like you and I a little crazy? Are we paranoid? Do we let it get to us too much? I have to, at times, try to put myself in check because I don't want to be like many of others online that's just constantly trying to terrify you because the next big death or the next big collapse is just around the corner. But on the other hand, when you sit and you look and you listen to all the things that's happening right now and the speed and intensity at which they are coming at us, you got to stop and wonder and say, maybe this time is different. Maybe we are on the verge of a nuclear war or World War III or a big collapse or, the next greatest earth-shattering weather change or earthquake or volcano or something like that. Because it's always something like that, right? It's always something like that that's just around the corner. It's a big freeze, the earth is cooling, and the earth is warming, and it's acid rain, and it's, volcanoes and calderas, and all these kinds of things. For me, I think the big reason why we live the way we do, both my wife and I agree on this, is not so much of the impending doom that could be around the corner, but it's that the world is becoming a really wicked, evil place. The degeneracy, the immorality is so in your face, and I don't want any part of it. That's why I live the way I do. And many of you have chosen to get out of the cities because you want to get as far away from that as you can. It doesn't completely isolate you from all of that, but at least it gets you further away from it. And I've said many times that if everything in the world was going perfectly normal, except the morality part, that is enough for me to start getting ready. I mean, when you look at what most people would say are the good guy nations, if you lined them all up, the top biblical nations, the top good guy nations, and you really look at them with open eyes and a discerning heart, it doesn't take long to realize that they're kind of the bad guys. They're the most immoral nations on the planet right now. And saying that, it doesn't mean that the other side are all the good guys. It just means that there's a lot more bad guys out there than you're aware of. There's a lot more evilness out there that we're aware of. And I think that's also hard for a lot of people because we've been so conditioned that there always has to be a good guy and a bad guy. And maybe that's true to a certain extent, but it's not quite as clear-cut as what we've always been made to believe. Not all the bad guys wear black hats, and not all the good guys wear white hats. In fact, there's only one really good guy out there, and he died and rose again, and will come back one day as the King of Kings. But for now, we're dealing with what's happening, right? We're dealing with all of this just craziness. Every day we turn our phones on, or I was going to say TVs, but no one watches TV anymore, do they? You get on your phone and you see what the latest disaster that's happening. And I'm sure there'll be another one, because this thing in Israel, it's been going on now for 2 weeks. I suspect it's got probably another 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks left before people start losing a little interest in it. And there's got to be something else that happens. Maybe it's a new expansion in the Middle Eastern thing. Maybe it's something with Russia and Ukraine. Maybe it's Taiwan. Maybe it's some other place that pops off. There has to be something. And it keeps going that way, and it gets more and more intense. And each time it's further and further down the field of, complete collapse. The thing is that I believe we are collapsing. I believe it's just happening at a pace that no one is really expecting. If you could go back and, well, you can read history books of, the collapse of the Roman Empire or other great civilizations. But those are all from a history book's perspective. It's very condensed down, that takes years or decades of something happening, and it puts it in a few hundred pages. It doesn't tell you what it felt like and what it looked like on a day-to-day basis. And I suspect if you could go back in time and talk to the average Roman citizen during Rome's collapse, they probably would say, yeah, things aren't great, but, I can still go buy a loaf of bread, and, I can still, go do this and that. I mean, it's not that bad, right? I mean, we're still got the gladiators fighting in the Colosseum. I mean, watch that every Monday night. It's not that bad, is it? I suspect that might be the case, because that's very similar to what's happening now, is that most people are completely oblivious, and they're just, the old saying, they're frogs getting cooked in the frying pan, just little by little, incrementally, until it gets to the point that they've changed their entire belief and moral systems. I mean, just look at churches today. The average things that are considered acceptable in churches would never even been considered when you and I were children. They wouldn't have just even thought about it, because it would have been so detestable, so immoral, so ungodly. And yet now we allow it in American churches today. And that's just one, microcosm, one example. I think that we are experiencing what can only be described as a collapse, and I don't have any clue of how much longer it's going to take. It could take years or decades. I suspect it's not going to be that long before things start to get bad enough that most people start worrying about it. I mean, if you just look at timelines and dates that elites and world leaders have thrown out there, we're not that many years away before they want to have all these things in place. And they want these things in place like in the year 2030. That's less than 7 years away. You can't just go from how we are now to having all of this stuff in place in less than 7 years. It has to start happening at a pretty rapid pace. So I do suspect things are going to continue to escalate more and more. Just like John Kerry said back when Joe Biden was elected, it's going to come with speed and intensity. That's why I think that we have to be serious. It's not because it could be around the corner. It's because we know it's happening. We don't know the timeline. And if it's not going to happen in our time, it would more likely happen in our children's timeline. And if nothing else, we're building out a society, whether the society is just you and your family, that can quite possibly have something there to hand off to your children. Because do you want your children growing up in a world that's been talked about by the World Economic Forum? Do you want them to have that as their existence, or do you want them to still retain some traditional values and moral foundations? No, they're not going to get that in this world. So regardless of whether the stock market or the dollar is going to collapse soon, or World War III is around the corner, or we're going to see a nuclear war over the next 12 months, the point is that we are seeing our society fall apart. It's the degradation process has already begun. It's been going on for decades now, really. It's just now becoming more and more obvious so that more and more people are noticing it. It's still not hitting that kind of threshold where everyone is seeing it, but more and more certainly are seeing it. I can remember 15, 20 years ago where folks like you and I were pretty rare. I mean, we were almost like the Underground Railroad, you know. We couldn't just talk to anyone about this kind of stuff because they really thought we were nuts. And nowadays, you can talk to just about anyone, and they may still think you're nuts, but they'll at least acknowledge that some of the things you talk about are correct. And so more and more people are becoming aware of stuff. And I think it's because it's more intense. It's happening more often, which really should be a warning sign. Because at some point, there's a chance that the incremental change will hit a certain point. And it's kind of like the straw that breaks the camel's back. It may not even be one significant event that happens. It could just be one thing that just pushes everything a little too far, and then it falls off the cliff. And we never know when that time happens. And so that's why we have to be prepared for it. That's why we do the things that we do. That's why it's become a lifestyle for many of us. It's not just a hobby that we have stuff in the corner of the closet for just in case. We've changed our lifestyles because it's not just one event that we're preparing for. It's a complete, total change that we're preparing for, a change that's already happened. And we want to not be part of that. We want to be as outside of that system as we can. And the only way that we can be outside of that system is to not be dependent upon that system. So that's why we live the way we do. That's why we strive for self-sufficiency and to form communities and tribes and to really get to where we just don't need the man. And I know that's hard because none of us probably have gotten to that point yet. But in the back of our minds, as long as we have some skills and some tools and supplies and some really good grit, we know that if we were forced, we could live without all of that. And that's really the most important thing. That's why I've constantly pushed developing that mental fortitude to get through this. And of course, the spiritual strength, because in the end, it all really is spiritual warfare. Whether the biblical end times is within a few months away or it's centuries away, we don't know. But we know it's getting worse. We know it's constantly getting closer. It's kind of like age. Are you going to die next week, next month, 10 years from now, or a few decades from now? You don't know, but you know eventually it's going to happen. And so you take steps to kind of prepare for that along the way. You know, life insurance and making sure you get paid out of debt, and you tell your children, someday when I'm gone, this is going to be yours. It's not because it's going to happen tomorrow. It's because you know it's going to happen someday. And that's the same way with what we're going through. We know it's going to happen someday. And if it's further off, honestly, I'm fine with that because that just gives me more time to prepare. I think it's not that far off, but we can be hopeful. And every day that we have left that we can continue to prepare, we should be doing that. We should be getting ready, getting your houses in order, taking care of preparations and skills, building that stronger and stronger spiritual relationship with the Father, and then also building tribe, building community, because in the end, we're going to need each other. Get your houses in order, folks. Prepare mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.